is the identity of self that comes from your spiritual source. That's why we change our names for spiritual purposes as we evolve. Because it's telling us, it's unraveling the layers of the self to get to the higher self, to see from a higher perspective. Right? So it don't matter whether you go into the light or whether you go into the dark. Because the same thing gonna happen. It's just who you gonna answer to. When you go through the light, you replay everything you went through. And you basically going into the teacher's lounge to check your test to make sure you passed everything. And then if you didn't, you flip back in right before that test, pass that test, and you flip right back out. Right? But to the naked eye, you was a walk-in, but they didn't see you come in and they didn't see you leave. You just needed your consciousness to refocus at a certain point in the timeline in order to pass your test that you wrote yourself. Right? But you couldn't get out of here unless you passed the test, because you have to follow the path all the way to the end. So when you go through the light, you're going to automatically see that everything you thought you was going through that was misery, because you was in the chapter of misery and it was meant to be that way. And you picked the suffering because you were strong enough to take it. And the other people that wasn't, they picked the ease. The strongest ones stay on the bottom the longest. If I don't believe in Jesus, Muhammad, Buddha, or Confucius, when I leave, none of them gonna have nothing to do with what I love the most. I don't love none of them more than I love my mom and my daddy. So the first people I don't agree when I cross over gonna be my mom and my daddy. Because I don't love their Jesus more than my mom and daddy. I don't love their Yahweh more than my mom and my daddy. So there's nobody else except for other relatives that I loved as much as my parents. Like my older sister that I could even see going across that would even make me give a fuck. Right, all that is your belief system actualizing your exit strategy. So imagine you have a meeting with yourself and you say, how am I gonna know when it's the right exit? I'm gonna see Jesus. I'm gonna see Muhammad. Or I'm gonna see Fatima. Or I'm gonna see Kalima, or I'm gonna see Hanuman. Whatever your agreement that shows you your exit, that's your construct. That's your exit construct that you created based off the life you live, so that you'll know which way you want to go when you leave. Right? You can either, like, some book of lives are long and they got chapters. You might not want to go through the rest of the chapters. You can trade out for a walk-in to come in between chapters or in the middle of a chapter. Some of them that thought the misery here was too great already did it. Right? And then they got to the other side, like, damn, I was at the end. Shit, I fucked up. Right? Then a lot of them know we at the end and they exiting because they want to come back as a child when everything been fixed. They don't want to see the grand finale. They don't give a fuck. Fuck your grand finale. Your big finish. I don't give a fuck. When I just want to see it when it's fixed. I don't want to see the misery end. I just want to see it when it ain't there. Right. But the story will still be told for eons to come until the next close of the age. Then we're going to create a new story for the next age. And it always starts with 7 generations planning. You got to plan for 7 generations. You can't close the age unless you got a plan that's going to have optimum efficiency or optimum effect for 7 generations. Right? After that, then the ones what's in the construct will carry the construct from the 7th generation to the close of the next age. But that's the reset. At the end of every reset, it's a golden age. And that's why you got a 24,000 year clock, 6,000 years, 6,000 years, 6,000 years, 6,000 years. lunar cycle, sun cycle, lunar cycle, sun cycle. Right? But the lunar used to be Lilith. So they put this moon shit here. I believe this is when they put the hologram up. Because you can sense the hologram, and the only way to get out of the hologram is to think above it. All it is it's a mind jamming system to keep you caught in constructs and cycles, the infinity loop. And to flip out of the infinity loop is to think above the 4-bit quantum encrypted artificial intelligence. If you can't think higher than artificial intelligence, you're an NPC. That means that you are right in line with artificial intelligence, because NPC's intelligence is artificial. They just programs. But they all come in with a book of life. Every program come in with a purpose. You're not just here. You got a purpose. Everybody got a purpose. Right? But I can't tell another person what their purpose is, but I can identify a gift that they have that got something to do with their purpose. If somebody's a good writer, 9 out of 10, their purpose was to write something. But what they supposed to write, I don't know if they're supposed to be Stephen King or the Apostle Paul, but I know they're supposed to write something. Right? And to tell them that is to encourage them, but it ain't to give them their destination. Right. It's to just help them identify their purpose.
That's deep. Yeah. Yeah, man, powerful, right?
Well, but the purpose, all right. When you're looking at the military or prison as a oppressive construct, it's going to drive you to the depths of misery. Some people become suicidal and can't take it. But when you repurpose what they gave you for their intentions for what you could use it for to your greatest good, you no longer feel oppressed. You fuck, this just is part of the process. Right? It's just like you don't know what every screw on your car for. Right? But you know if you turn the screw on the oil pan, you're gonna let the oil out. Right? So that don't got nothing to do with the screw behind the door. But by understanding how you can use releasing the oil in order to change the oil, it becomes beneficial. But if you just turn the screw and release the oil and take off driving, you're gonna blow your engine. So when I was in prison, in my mind, I wasn't in prison. In my mind, I was in a monastery and a institution of learning in which I had to write my own curriculum while I was there. Powerful, and that's what I did. Powerful. So instead of letting them use it to make me conform to the ways of the institution, in other words, behave like the rest of the inmates or behave how I want to behave and not be hostile to the inmates, right? Just going about my business, stay in my lane and do my thing and follow my purpose. It's a monastery, a place for religious contemplation or spiritual contemplation, monastery, and it's a learning institution. It's a university to me, right? So now I got access to books and I got access to my spirit. So that's all I need for it to be a monastery. And that takes away the bitterness and the sting of the condition. The same would apply if I would have been in the military. I tried to go to the Marines because it was something I wanted to learn in the Marines about dogs. And they were the only ones offering the training programs for the K9 Corps at the time. Right? Later on, the Army had it first, I think. Then the Marines had it, and the Army had cut it out for a couple years in the 80s, and then they picked it back up. But during the time when I was applying, I had never got in no trouble or nothing. I missed the math on it by 1 point, and that stopped me. The whole test, whatever the civil service test, by me being a non-graduate, I needed a higher score than a graduate. If I had a high school diploma, I would have had a high enough score to get in. But because I didn't, I needed a higher score and I was 1 point short, which kept me from being a Marine. Right? But I ain't never get mad about it. I went on by my life. end up in prison. So either way it went, whether I would have been a Marine or whether I went to prison, which I did, I was still going to use whichever one to my greatest advantage. Right? Because I didn't know how much I loved studying military strategy and tactics until I started playing chess in prison or in the county jail, actually. And then I began to study chess, which was also part of my determining my path. And then when I read Alexander Dumas, Count of Monte Cristo, that spoke to my condition. And that opened up my eyes to a lot of stuff that I was dealing with in there. And then all of the stuff, it didn't matter no more. And then out of nowhere, guys was bringing me different books that wasn't in the library. I was having mystical experiences of phantom books in the library. Wow. That shit was crazy, brother. But all of this stuff was true. It was all part of what I was experiencing and keeping my sanity under somebody else. Because I couldn't figure out how can 72 guards hold 1,400 inmates. I was baffled. Fuck that fence. Right? I couldn't understand it. It didn't make sense to me. And the study of the inmates in the institution, trying to figure out what's making us stay here. Why are we staying here? Talking to the old guys, why is we staying here? Said, because you can't never get none of these motherfuckers organized well enough to leave. And then it made all click. Because you can't get the moles to ride with the Melanics. You can't get the Melanics to ride with the Stones. You can't get the Stones to ride with the GDs. All this in prison. Then you can't get the set from this side of Detroit to ride with the set from that side of Detroit, east side versus west side. And on east side, you got the 7 mile niggas versus the 6 mile niggas versus the 5 mile niggas. And so the division began to prove itself. Divide and conquer is real. Which go back to that drop of blood question earlier. And the divide and conquer can also be used as reverse engineering. Right? Because you can use the only way you're gonna make a guy do something you don't want him to do, that he don't want to do, is to tell him he can't do it. And he gonna do it, and he gonna do it twice, take pictures, and make sure you've seen him doing it. Right? So they told us what the new standard of beauty was and that we can't have it, and we went full throttle to get it.
Oh, yeah.
But it was all part of a ploy just to get us to contribute to the one drop doctrine. Mixing and amalgamating of the species of the human type in order for everybody to have an equal right of ascension. The term they use for it is Brazilianization or neutralization, the neutrinoid. And they had a write-up in People magazine about it. You know, and it was to make all of the people of the earth contribute a drop of blood, but you had people came from other places. Right? You had Pleiadians came, Arcturians came. They all want to see the Anunnaki lose too. Because everybody had conflict with them at one point or another.
Yeah. Anunnaki, they just said they got beef with everybody, huh?
They the galactic problem child from the Sirius constellation.
The galactic problem child. Shit on that note.
Everywhere they go, certain side of the family that come from Sirius cause the problems. And the other side of the family that come from the Pleiades always cleaning up their dirt. So Inky is from the Pleiadian side of the family, but Enlil is the rightful heir. He just so happened to be from the reptilian side of the family. the Syrians. And they side of the family, selfish, self-centered, operate from the reptile brain more than they do from the mammal brain. Whereas the Pleiadians operate from the whole brain without taking sides, which gives them more power. Right? And this is why it was always a conflict. So look at it in terms of thinking selfishly or thinking holistically. Holistically speaking, everybody got to have an equal right of ascension in a free will universe. Selfishly speaking, I don't give a fuck about them long as I sin. Right? The God mind is a universal mind. A universal mind is a mind that is holistic. It's a whole mind. A selfish mind is restricted. It's the side effect of being created in a restricted will universe. Right? So those in the free will universe that seeking the highest potential expression of the free will universe will think more holistically. Unified field theory. Don't do that, brother, because that's going to affect this over here and we're going to have a different problem. Right? So the matriarchy start with the two core premises. How does it affect the children? How does it affect the earth? Once you give me the answers, I can determine whether it's going to be applicable or not. Whereas the invaders, they don't think like that. They think, how am I going to benefit and what am I going to get out of it? There's two different ideologies. One's matriarchal, one's patriarchal. In the matriarchy, the strongest patriarchies emerge from a holistic ideology. And this is how you conquer the restricted will universe dominating the free will universe. Because you have to create a ruler class of men. In other words, you got to create classy men, because the only thing that separates peasants from royalty is character. Remember, I just mentioned Alexander Dumas, Count of Monte Cristo. Right. This is what the old guy was teaching him the whole first half of the book. How to become the royalty that you wish to conquer. Once he understood how to become and act like royalty, they can't tell he's not royalty. Right? And because he picked a rank account, he could be any of these kings' illegitimate child with wealth. Right? But it was all an elaborate illusion that he created in order to get revenge. So the flip to that is it tells us in order for us to get revenge, we have to flip their elaborate illusion. You can't do this, you can't do that. You can't be a god if you can't do some god shit.
Right.
And I always say that because I tell people, first you got to find out what god shit is. And how can you in your physical vessel do some god shit? Right? Because this is that you got to challenge the mind to think beyond the 3D construct in order to push the mind above three-dimensional thought form. Right? They run around saying, I'm God, I'm God, I'm God, I'm original man. Okay, prove it. How do you prove you're the original man? When your DNA, if you go back 4 grandparents ago, is so diverse, you don't even know what you is. Right? And all of these is mind games, deceptions inside of a deception, inside of a deception. They all divide and conquer. The God mind don't take none of this shit personal. If you don't take none of it personal, it can't personally affect you.
Right.
That's called building a shield. Then, now that it no longer affects you, you can see it better than you could when it was affecting you. Because when it affects you, you become infected with the 3D Mr. Smith mind matrix. You become a guardian of the hologram, the projection, the mental construct. If all of us wasn't agreeing on this construct at the same time, it wouldn't be happening. Now we got to all agree to change it for the better or to totally annihilate it. It's not necessary to annihilate it. Therefore, it's necessary that it don't be annihilated. Therefore, the only thing left for us to do is change it. Change is constant, so that means it was going to happen anyway. The inevitability of change tells us that we should push for a change. But you got to remember in the 48, it says, preach the need for change, but don't change too much too fast because it'll shock the conscience of the people. Right? For the worse. But if you can get them to see all of the reasons why we need to change and all of the things that we feel that is stopping us from changing for the better, is not what we did. We didn't come up with racism, but it was written. It's a construct. Inside of the construct is trying to preserve itself from being broken by the mind of the gods. In other words,